The men and women of the line, working overtime, sweating for their dime, their labor stolen from them, they do not know what it's worth. One day they will rule the earth. Here's to the farmer on the land, bending down in toil, harvesting the soil, working through the cold and heat, growing rice and wheat. One day they will rule the earth. And do the killers of our dream, the fat cats and their schemes, their hungry war machine, the bosses and the businessmen, those privileged from their birth, we will drive them from the earth. This song is for the workers of the world. Our challenge has been hurled, our flag is unfurled. Sisters, brothers, shed your chains, let the fight begin. We have a socialist world, we have a socialist world, we have a whole wide world to win.
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted. But anyway, welcome to our web conference of the new year and welcome to 2021. So 2020, one word, oof. So last year we started off with almost getting to World War III with the war with Iran. Thankfully, that was averted. But of course, another crisis has occurred, which of course is the COVID-19 pandemic. And it gave, and we also had to go into lockdown in most states, at least. But that is because we want to stay safe and make sure none of us get this not contagious disease, excuse me. And and a lot of things, but a lot of things have happened last year, such as the Black Lives Matter uprisings, and this is also showed us that there are major flaws within our capitalist system, as well as our law enforcement, and it is clear that we need a whole new set of economic system and a new set of law enforcement. And of course, that is why we are here in 2021 looking forward for a new year and a new, sorry about that, a new form of politics, which will be very much radical. And of course, 2021, well, there's some good news and there's bad news. Good news is Donald Trump is gone. Bad news is Joe Biden's our president. But Mitch McConnell, no longer the Senate Majority Leader. However, Chuck Schumer is our new Senate Majority Leader. Yay. But this just shows us that we can no longer rely, if we haven't already, on federal elective politics. And speaking, and now that we have a few Reddit, it's, excuse me, dry throat. So a few amateur stock investors from Reddit have invested in stock in GameStop, and this has caused a bubble. Unfortunately, though, the elites of Wall Street do not like this. And it also shows that that because the elites have shown that only the Wall Street can control the market, it also shows cracks in Wall Street. And right now, I would like to give it away to Lily of Sina with a activist report. Take it away, Lily.
Since the collapse of the Soviet Union nearly 30 years ago, many on the left have disregarded the project of Marxist-Leninist socialism as a whole. They deride it as state capitalist or totalitarian. But we here at CPI view the aftermath of the USSR as an example of why all workers and progressive-minded people should support anti-imperialist or Marxist-Leninist countries, even if they themselves do not consider themselves to be Marxist-Leninists. Many people who call themselves leftists cheered for Yeltsin bringing democracy because they would no longer have to defend the Soviet Union. However, the collapse of the USSR was not only an economic disaster for the former Soviet republics, but also the capitalist social democracies of the West. Since 1989, with the dismantling of socialism in the East, we have seen the dismantling of social welfare in the West. Neoliberalism, the ideology of privatization and unrestricted free market greed, has dominated the world since the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. And the social democratic and liberal parties have gone along with it. In our view, the Soviet Union during the Cold War functioned as a counterweight, holding back some of the most brutal excesses of Western capitalism, a bargaining chip for the workers of the world, essentially. As long as people knew there was an alternative to capitalism with a strong guaranteed social wage, the capitalist powers of the world needed to convince their working class to believe their system of profits was better. And to persuade them, they conceded some things. These concessions were greater in Western Europe, where socialist people's democracies were right at their doorstep. Even though many of these concessions were fought for by socialists and communists, unemployment insurance and the 40-hour work week, for example. But nonetheless, the bourgeoisie of the capitalist countries came to accept these concessions as a necessary bulwark against Soviet communism. With the end of the Cold War, however, these countries no longer needed these concessions, and they demolished them rather brutally. Privatization and austerity have largely ruled the world in the past quarter century, but there's an emerging alternative. The One Belt, One Road initiative coming from China and their model of loaning, contrary to the IMF's model. China does not require public sector cuts in austerity. But I'm not here to discuss China and the Belt and Road, although there's plenty to be said. I'm here to explain to all people fighting for a better life and a better world that when the imperialists beat down an independent country in the developing world, all of us suffer. We must oppose all imperialist attacks on Iran, Venezuela, China, and other anti-imperialist countries, regardless of whatever criticisms we might have with their political and economic systems. An attack on one is an attack on all. Solidarity.
Thank you, Lily, for that inspiring report. Next up is Max de Sachs, also from Sina. Take it away, Max de Sachs.
Hey everyone, my name is Max de Sachs. That's how you refer to me in this community. I play alto saxophone, and I'm from the Beltway region of Washington, D.C. Now, I've been a communist for a long time. Well, in more specifics, since I was 13. I picked up Marx, I picked up Lenin, and during those formative years, like as I discovered new information about socialism and about communism, I swapped ideologies left and right in terms of the left-wing sphere of ideologies. This really only changed when I did realize eventually that Marxism and Marxist-Lenin and everything we have been told in the West and particularly in the United States of America, my home country, about Marxism-Leninism is not true. It is either a distortion, it is either propaganda, or it is either simply lying by omission. and not taking into account historical context. Now, once I realized this, I came to the conclusion, and after seeing like almost every force throughout history that has successfully managed to build like at least a form of socialism in their country was Marxist-Leninist, after seeing this, I realized that I needed to apply Marxian analysis to where I came from. I am from the intelligentsia, I'll be straight up. And I realized that a lot of my class, in terms of the intelligentsia, has been turned against socialism. It has been turned either toward, you know, standard bourgeois liberalism or even far-right politics in some cases. Now, considering these sobering facts, I realized myself as a Marxist-Leninist and as a member of the intelligentsia, I do have a lot of time on my hands. I have time to, as a lot of people in my generation do. I have time to play video games. I have time to, you know, do non-constructive stuff. I have time to hang out, waste time with friends, and do all sorts of things. But I realized as a Marxist, this time needs to be applied. And if I was to be serious about Marxism and Marxist-Leninist and being a principled Marxist-Leninist, I needed to apply this time toward building an actual movement among the masses, for the masses. Not just simply going to protest, not just simply being on Twitter, not just simply talking on Discord. And to this effect, I discovered Students and Youth for a New America. Students and Youth for a New America is an independent socialist youth group. We do not claim to be part of any party, although we work with several parties and associate organizations. And we are non-sectarian. We don't seek Twitter battles. We don't seek just very infantile disputes over minutia of policy and opinion that we see all across even like some of our other comrades and their organizations. We seek unity in the face of opposition. And to this regard, we are willing to work with organizations that are in touch with the masses in their local area. Now, to get in touch with the masses in my local area, I realized that I needed to go into DC. I needed to go into regions that I've never been in before. I needed to visit neighborhoods and places that I passed by going either to the National Mall or toward like the heart of DC itself. And to this effect, I started Sign Up Beltway, which is a branch of Students in Youth for New America. Now, we're still a tiny branch. But we are independent of parties, and we are also dedicated toward building, getting out of the movement, getting out of the liberal cliches, getting out of the cliques, getting out of the nonsense, and going directly to the masses and providing aid and support. Now, a couple actions that Sign Up Beltway has taken, even though we are a small group, we help distribute mutual aid, including food, water, and winter clothing, medicine, and toiletries to encampments of people who are in DC, who are in poverty. There's an encampment by like right in the heart of DC itself, like not that far from Howard University, that is in a public park, and you can find like 20 tents of people who are homeless in this encampment. And then right across the street, there's empty housing, empty apartments with no one in them. Why does this exist? Well, it exists partially for the parasitic landlords and the parasitic people who own these houses who don't want to fill them. They don't want to fill them for people who need houses. They seek profit. They seek money. They do not seek to provide for the people. Now, to this effect, Sign Up Beltway has also realized that since a lot of people in my region and in my neighborhood where I live personally are very upper middle class and very intelligentsia, we've realized that even though this is the case, we can still use the intelligentsia to a degree. So SINA has set up donation drives for clothes. We've set up donation drives for toiletries. We've set up donation drives to actually take resources that are not needed, to be frank, amongst like a lot of members of the intelligentsia, and direct them toward neighborhoods, direct them toward communities that do need these resources. And in doing this, we are basically providing for the people. We are providing a source where the government has completely abandoned its people. And I think this is a really important concept that a lot of Marxists and a lot of leftists have to understand. We have to get out of this protest milieu. We have to get out of the movement and to the masses. We have to look at poverty directly in the eye, directly in our neighborhoods, directly in our cities, directly in all of our towns. And we have to change that. We have to help people. It's the only way we're going to build our movement, and it's the only way socialism will come to America, by helping people. It's not about supporting a particular country. It's not about a particular policy or a particular population. It's about bringing this ideology of uplifting humanity as a whole, uplifting people's economic status, uplifting democracy, uplifting just our country from what capitalism has done to our people. This is the essence of socialism. And if we're to bring it to America as Marxists, we need to dedicate ourselves toward that movement. Now, to all the people who are watching this at home, I want you to think of one simple thing. If you're serious, if you're willing to dedicate lots of time, and I mean lots of time, maybe even toward this movement, toward socialism, if you're willing to dedicate even your life toward this movement, then we need everyone we can get. And it's something that everyone has to think about on a certain level. What can I do today to advance the cause of proletarian internationalism? What can I do today to prevent a Middle Eastern country from getting bombed or robbed? What can I do today to help my neighborhood? Not tomorrow, today. And I'm 17. I'm young. I could be doing other things. I could be hanging out more with friends. I could be focusing more on school, trying to get into some bourgeois college that's going to teach me liberal abstractions to try and confuse me. I could be focused on a lot of other things, but this is what I'm doing. This is what Marxists need to do. This is what people free time need to do who consider themselves Marxists.
Right on, Max the Sax. Give it up for Max. And Lily, and please give it up for Lily as well. Thank you so much. Again, 2021 is, to me, the year of hope, because we have so much, to build on, and we have so much to progress on. And and I am really honored, to be here all with you. And I'm also honored to be introducing our next guest, who is a world-renowned folk singer and songwriter. Please give it up for David Rovics.
Well, it is a pleasure to be joining you guys here, and I love those speeches. And I would add that there's, from my experience, to build a movement, we need to be part of activities that are happening locally and that are speaking to where people are at. And I think that is going to be, for a lot of people in a lot of this country, that is going to have to do with the waves of evictions coming. And if anybody's mic is on for optimal audio, you can mute it. If you're not me, mute your mic. I can hear somebody's mic is on because I'm a musician, so I can hear these things. Secret powers. Oh, well done. And I'm going to take the headphone off because I don't need it in if everybody's muted anyway. But this is a song that sort of represents exactly those kinds of absentee landlords that the last speaker was just speaking about. This is one in particular. To all the Jared Kushners of the world, and all the money that you own, you who look at us with such indifference, sitting upon your throne, from which you collect all the rent from your subjects in all the most gentrified towns, regardless of whether a global pandemic have forced us to shut everything down. To all the Jared Kushners of the world, for whom the ceiling is the sky. For you, life comes so easy, inherited from birth. Why would you ever ask why? Do you think you earned it all? It's up to you how much you charge. It's all yours to keep. Would you climb any mountain of corpses, no matter how slippery, no matter how steep? To all the Jared Kushners of the world, is your appetite ever met? At what point do you ever wonder just how fucked you can make things get? Before it's bad enough that even you and your investors can see the whole thing's gonna fall. Just how top-heavy can an icon be before it can't stand up at all? To all the Jared Kushners of the world, how do you expect things will transpire when all your filings are enforced and the moratorium expires? Do you envision a neat row of U-Haul trucks, tenants all packed up to leave? Their homes, your businesses, their neighborhoods, their cemeteries, where they used to go to grieve. To all the Jared Kushners of the world, and all your ill-begotten gains, you who sit comfortably in your limousine, ignoring all the blood stains. Have you seen this movie before? Was it good? What's your favorite scene? Mine's when they take off the blindfold and the king meets his guillotine. To all the Jared Kushners of the world. And I think I had a request for one of the songs, so I'll do 3 songs. I'm doing a 15-minute set here. So this next song is about somebody that everybody has heard of, who needs no introduction. But if you don't know what WikiLeaks is, you can look it up. Behind these prison walls, there's a man who's won awards for the work that he has done and all that it affords, such as the knowledge of the horrors committed in our name. They can't stop the message, so the messenger gets blamed. Behind these prison walls, in solitary confinement, in a land of rolling hills and royalty and other such refinement, is someone who is a hero to whistleblowers everywhere, who helped them tell the world of the crimes of Tony Blair. Behind these prison walls, you will find a mortal man, the reason why we know what happened in Afghanistan, when the soldiers of the empire, whose sun set long before, were torturing civilians in their terror war. Behind these prison walls is a part of WikiLeaks, an eloquent orator, but you won't hear him speak. Locked away in silence, one who knows too well how those in power act when there's another war to sell. behind these prison walls is one who stands accused of exactly what offenses the U.S. has refused to say precisely which, or to try to clear the mist, or to explain how he's not the same as the other journalists behind these prison walls is a person they deprive of most of the things in life that keep us all alive. A person being tortured as we stand here now for revealing the war crimes. Why, when, where, how? Behind these prison walls, our very right to be informed of what the hell is going on is the teacup in this storm. With knowledge there is power, so the solution by the crown, a 24-hour-a-day indefinite lockdown behind these prison walls. And then somebody suggested this song, which I'll close with. And if anybody's in Portland, then please go to Artists for Rent Control and sign up to become part of Portland Emergency Eviction Response. And everybody's welcome. Locksmiths, especially. We need locksmiths. If anybody knows any locksmiths in Portland. Because when we unevict people, I mean, this hasn't yet been a situation exactly, but when we unevict people, we may need to actually, break into the houses that they've been evicted from, which, ideally with a locksmith rather than like a crowbar, When you're working 2 jobs and living in a tent, when a house costs $1 million and you can't pay the rent, when politicians say they'll help but it keeps getting worse each time the landlord lobby pulls the strings of the purse, when the human right to housing isn't even part of the debate, you're living in a failed state. When millions of citizens are spending half their lives locked up in a prison for trying to survive. When laws must be broken just to have a place to stay. When the prisons pay the senators to look the other way. If you have to be a criminal to put food upon your plate, you're living in a failed state. When you're facing climate breakdown, when the trees are all on fire, when half the country's underwater, when a climate change denier runs the nation, and the opposition party votes for oil rigs and pipelines, it's not so much a country as it is a corporation buckling under its weight, you're living in a failed state. When your nation is an empire facing daily blowback, and the only thing your leaders can think to do is attack, bipartisan consensus that we need to spend $700 billion before the year's end on a military budget to make America great, you're living in a failed state. When almost every day some psycho with a gun has to open fire on a crowd before it's done. When a music festival becomes a free fire zone and all they can say is it's okay now he was acting alone. Buy some armor, pray to God, and hide behind a gate. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. And that is my contribution. Thank you very much for listening, everybody out there.
All right, give it up for David Rovics. Woo!
Thank you.
Now that is true folk music. And not that hipster bullshit you hear in Brooklyn or where am I thinking? Oh, Williamsburg, that's it.
Williamsburg.
But yeah, definitely definitely true folk music. Really takes you back to the days of Woody Guthrie. And and I am now a fan. And now we would like to introduce two very special guests. And we're very honored to have two student activists from Iran, Madonna and Zoya, as they have a message for Americans on peace and international solidarity. So please take it away, Madonna and Zoya. So sorry, folks. There's a little bit of a connection problem with through Iran. Is it possible we could turn up the volume over there?
Iran was a dependent country to the West without any independence. The West, especially America, made decisions instead of Shah and Iranian people. The military was completely dependent to the American orders. It was an obvious interfering in the affairs of Iran, and now it continues in the Western Asia area, as in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and so on. But now, after the Islamic Revolution, Iran has been a powerful and independent country. For example, based on Intercept report in 2017, Iran is known as the seventh most powerful country in the world. This political and independence is a result of Revolution Islamic Republic of Iran. The next about military independence. Pahlavi Shahs tried to strengthen Iran's military by buying all kinds of Western weapons. On the other hand, Iran was considered as a storehouse of ammunition and was used on various occasions without Iran's permission. United States Defense Ministry describes Iran as the most powerful in missile power in the Western Asia.
Democrats and Republicans have the same method in the face of Western Asia. Democrats' strategy shows that it doesn't want to get in war directly, but we know that it is proxy war.
First of all, military, and second, policy dimensions. In military dimensions, war trade by ISIS enhanced. Biden has claimed responsibility for the fight against ISIS, with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton acknowledging in her book Difficult Choices that ISIS was in fact created by the United States to divide the Middle East.
And you saw in his first President's Day in Baghdad, it was happened terrorist attack by ISIS group. About 4,000 ISIS terrorists entered Iraq from Syria through as military vehicles under the American flag.
First, what are the goals and motives of the United States and its allies in forming an anti-ISIS coalition? The sensitivity of this question becomes even greater when we know that the members gathered in the coalition were themselves the founder and main supporters of ISIS. The second question is, what is the purpose of this coalition, which is actually composed of opponents of the Syria regime, by attacking ISIS positions in Syria and Syria with their previous opposition to the Syria regime and its overthrow, no conflict.
Former United States President Donald Trump has repeatedly stated that ISIS was created and supported by the United States government through Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And Biden supported it under Obama and now as President of the United States. From day one, when his government came to power, he and his deputy, Kamala Harris, also openly supported the strengthening of ISIS.
Democrats have shown that in the political dimension, by pressuring the other side and negotiating with new challenges, it is pressuring Iran to return to its obligations under the UN Security Council under certain conditions, or to bring Iran back to the negotiating table through sanctions and pressure such as this brings vision in always towards peace and conveys the message of peace to the world, contrary to the United States war scenario.
Iran has never started a war, and militarily Iran has always acted defensively, not offensively, but will respond decisively to any of the enemy's war plans. War is a war of wills, and a strong will can win this war. The most powerful will is based on spirituality and religions. Religions that cannot stand up to the inhuman acts of lunatics like Trump and Biden are distorted and cannot provide peace and tranquility in the world. But Islam, contrary to Islamophobia, is a messenger of peace and security.
As the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution said, Islam becomes meaningful and realized with the trinity of justice, rationality, and spirituality, and the political system of Islam, which arises from the trinity of rationality, spirituality, and justice, is Islamic democracy.
The martyrdom and assassination of scientists is at the core of American, Arab, and Hebrew coalition, funded by Saudi Arabia, Zionist regime, and the United States. The sabotage of Iran's nuclear sites, such as Natanz, is on the United States agenda, while Iran seeks the peaceful use of nuclear energy. The American people have fallen victim to the Zionist regime ideology that governs American states. An American who can help preserve human values by choosing the right people, but The current United States President Biden declares that I am not a Jew, but a Zionist. Biden's deputy, Harris, also said that if there was no Israel, the United States should create Israel. The purpose of this triangle is to prevent any progress in the world. Follow the martyrdom of the martyrs are Fakhrizadeh and Ahmadi Roshans. These were scientists who were looking for scientific progress for human beings. As Shahid Fakhrizadeh was doing scientific research on the corona vaccine, and now this Iranian vaccine, unlike the Pfizer foreign vaccine and English vaccine, has been able to bring good results.
The United States is the only country that has a history of nuclear attacks on defenseless countries and now claims to ensure peace and nuclear security, but accuses Iran. The United States has used nuclear weapons in Iraq, Fallujah, and Afghanistan and caused these humanitarian catastrophes. Babies born after these enemy attacks have lots of problems. All of this is the product of the United States anti-human nuclear activities. But what has Iran done? Iran will use the use of nuclear energy peacefully for all and non-peacefully for any country. And in contrast to the American view, it is a look like sunlight that can be prevented. In the near future, Iran will increase its nuclear power, and the United States embargo on science will not be able to prevent Iran from doing so. Iran will become nuclear and atomic and will move towards clean energy. Iran seeks progress in all dimensions, including religious, scientific, political, economic, and so on. Trump knew power in his nuclear suitcase, but it must be said that, Mr. Trump, power is not in the nuclear suitcase. Power is in the will. The American people said no to you, and you are no longer president. But Iran has the will to have nuclear knowledge, and you are not a number who want to stop our progress.
General Qasem Soleimani was who that Obama has said about him, he is my enemy, but I have a special respect for him. Or John Kerry said he'd like to see his if it happened to me. However, the soldier of the Islamic homeland doesn't consider himself a politician. On its tombstone is written soldier. Iran's strategy is defensive, not offensive. General Qasem Soleimani was martyred neither on the battlefield nor in his own country, but in a country where they were official guests. The drones are lifted at the behest of the United States. As a result, it was an act called a terrorist government, not a terrorist group. Someone who claims to be a terrorist has done the same. Trump and Biden are like each other. They are a terrorist government. Trump's deputy said about General Qasem Soleimani that Qasem Soleimani's blood is more dangerous than Qasem Soleimani himself. It's true. For progress and peace in the region and for the world, we will drive the United States out of the region. America has no place on another continent and is constantly hostile from there. As a result, we will drive the United States out of the region. But the American people are different in this matter. If the American people can change their view and come to the conclusion that they have the right to Iran, unlike the Iranians, to give Yemen the right that the crimes being committed by Saudi Arabia and the United States in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the freedom seekers of the world will give their rights. They will stand by the Avengers, fight for certainty. Both the perpetrators of the terrorism and the elimination of the United States with the methodology of war, interference, inhuman acts, and subvert the idea from which this strategy model is extracted and produced. The result of this section is that we can have a world with peace and tranquility without war, and the value of human beings is respected in it. The dissolution of the United States is taking place in the economic, cultural, and cultural spirits of civilization. In this event, the martyrdom of General Qasem Soleimani is accelerating this dissolution. Will be.
Wow, that was amazing, and I was actually quite frightened, looking at the scene of the bombing of the general, and I want to give you my condolences as well. And and without a further ado, I would like to introduce the man of the hour, per se. He's the you all know him as a well-acclaimed journalist who has traveled extensively throughout the Middle East, and as well as the host of the live streams that we see every week. Please give it up for Caleb Maupin.
Well, I want to thank our guests who presented this evening. I want to thank our guests from Iran for joining us. It is certainly a very late hour, or perhaps I should say an early hour of the morning in Iran. So their presence joining us is especially appreciated. And during the question and answer session, we will no doubt have questions for them about Iran and about the international situation and about some of the lies that were told. I also want to thank David Rovics for that amazing performance. Really, really beautiful. He is a very, very skilled songwriter, presenting a message of social justice and anti-imperialism, along with his well put together folk music. And there's something very special about folk music in particular. Communist movements and progressive and revolutionary movements often carry with them an element of folk music. I remember being a child and attending folk concerts and hearing the songs of Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger and other American folk singers who spoke about the working class and its struggle for justice. And at the time, I didn't know anything about socialism or Marxism or imperialism, but yet I heard this music, and perhaps some of my inclination toward progressive ideas came from hearing such music. It's interesting that Pete Seeger, the well-known folk musician who eventually joined the Communist Party, he originally studied Beethoven and Mozart and classical music at Harvard University. But in 1936, he and his parents attended a folk concert in South Carolina to hear the music of working class people, the music of labor unions, the music of the African American community, the music of those in the mining towns and the working class people of America. And it was in 1936, after attending this folk music concert, that Pete Seeger not only decided to dedicate his life to performing folk music rather than classical music, but it was also after attending this concert that he decided to join the Communist Party and join the revolutionary movement. And if one looks around the world, in China, as the Communist Party of China was emerging and building a revolutionary movement and fighting against the Chiang Kai-shek government, Edgar Snow, the journalist from the United States visited and became the first person to interview Mao Zedong. And when he interviewed Mao Zedong, one of the things he noticed about the Red Army camp is that at the camp, the people at the Red Army camp were always singing. And they had taken some of the oldest, most well-known Chinese melodies and folk songs and rewritten the words to be in line with the Chinese Communist Party's vision of building a whole new country and driving out the imperialists and the capitalist system. And it's very important that as those of us who are dedicated to changing the world, as we change the way we see things, as we learn to reject what Wall Street and the Pentagon, through their media, mainstream media, want us to believe, as we learn to reject the messages that are projected at us through social media. Wow, I put myself in the center there. As we reject the messages that are pushed at us through social media, that we learn to develop our own art and our own culture and our own music. And so folk music has always been very, very important. And when I heard David Rovics performing and singing that song about the fight against landlords, that makes me think about the Communist Party and the role that they played in the 1930s, fighting for the people that were struggling against home foreclosures and evictions, how a number of states throughout the country passed moratoriums in response to the progressive struggle of communists against the big landlords and bankers to fight for the right of working people to stay in their homes. It was very, very inspiring to hear David Rovics. The theme for my presentation tonight is living in a dying empire, because I think that we are very much living in the center of a dying empire. The United States and the imperialist system, where a few monopolistic corporations dominate the world and beat down developing countries and wage wars against countries that assert their independence. This global system of monopoly capitalism is coming to an end. And we are living in the United States, a country that has very much been at the center of that system for so very long. And we're watching an empire in decline. And we are living in a society that is dealing with the effects of an empire reaching its conclusion. I think our Iranian friends in their video, they said we're witnessing the dissolution of the United States. And in very, very many ways, that seems to be the reality. But what do we do about that? Well, I want to draw some historical parallels and lessons from the fall of the Roman Empire. Right? The Roman Empire was at one point an empire that dominated much of the world, dominated Europe, dominated the Mediterranean, North Africa. But that empire came to an end. And the fall of the Roman Empire was something that the founders of the United States thought quite a bit about. One of the best-selling books at the time of the founding of the United States, of the American Revolution, was Edward Gibbon's 8-volume history of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. And you can bet that Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Alexander Hamilton were all reading Edward Gibbon, as there weren't very many books printed back in that time. And that was one of the most cutting-edge works of social commentary and historical analysis that was being published, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. And as they studied the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, they crafted the United States trying to learn some of the lessons from the fall of the Roman Empire. And so the understanding of Rome and how Rome came to fall was pretty influential on the history of the United States and on the development of the United States. Now, why did the Roman Empire fall? You will hear all kinds of answers. If you look throughout the work, there are people who say the Roman Empire fell because of lead in pipes, and it made people crazy from of the lead in the pipes. People say the Roman Empire fell because their culture decayed and became more and more decadent or something like that. That's a standard conservative answer. Some people will say the Roman Empire fell because people stopped believing in the Roman Empire. There are many, many idealist answers. But it's in the writing of Karl Kautsky the German Marxist, who wrote a very important book called The Foundations of Christianity, that we have a materialist analysis of why the Roman Empire fell. Well, the Roman Empire fell for the simple reason that slavery is a highly inefficient economic system. Think about it for a minute. What motivation does a slave have to work? Not very much, right? A slave, they work because the slave master says, if you don't work, I will beat you. Or if you don't work, I will deprive you of food. And in a small scale, when the slave is in the same household as the slave master, there might be some motivation for the slave to contribute to the overall wealth of the household. But when the Romans, as they had big, huge plantations, as they had big, huge mines, the motivation for the hundreds and hundreds of slaves that they brought in to extract minerals from the earth and to grow their crops continued to decrease. And the more slaves you get, the harder it is to force those slaves to work, right? If you have 10 slaves, perhaps the slave master can stay on top of all 10 of them and tell them all to work. When you have 100 slaves or 1,000 slaves, it becomes less and less efficient. And the bigger the Roman Empire got, the more foreign slaves they brought in, the bigger their plantations and mines became, the less and less efficient the Roman Empire became. The industrial output of the Roman Empire was constantly decreasing. Their ability to grow their own crops decreased. Their ability to extract their own minerals and produce their own metal tools decreased. The bigger and more powerful the Roman Empire got, the weaker it became from within. And Rome was basically a military society. And they made up, as their agricultural output and industrial output decreased, they made up for it by plundering other people's crops and plundering other people's minerals and, pointing countries around the world, pointing their spears at them and taking the people from those countries as slaves. And the Roman Empire was essentially built on a very, very reactionary system. Slavery was an outmoded economic system. And across the world, many of the peoples that the Romans conquered had adopted a different system called feudalism. And feudalism is a much more efficient system than slavery. Under feudalism, every peasant or serf has their individual tract of land. And they work the land, and they pay their obligation to the landlord or the noble, but then they get to keep what's left over. So there's much more of an incentive for a peasant to work than there is for a slave to work. A serf or a peasant has a far, far higher motivation to work. And as a result, feudalism is a much more efficient system than the system that the Romans kept called slavery. So what the Romans were doing is they were going around to parts of the world that had the feudal system and taking them over and forcing them to pay tribute. And essentially, they were holding back history. The wheels of history had turned. The slave system was being replaced by a more efficient system. And the Romans, they essentially were trying to hold back history. And ultimately, the reason that the Roman Empire was not sustainable was because it was an outmoded economic system. And there was a higher mode of production in existence. And that is ultimately the reason for the fall of the Roman Empire. It was rooted in economics. And it was rooted in the drive for a higher mode of production. Rome was holding back history. It was a reactionary empire. And so the Roman Empire eventually met its conclusion. And I think you can draw a parallel to the United States. We maintain the free market capitalist system here in the United States. The rule of profits, profits in command. And this is highly, highly irrational. If you compare the way socialist countries like Vietnam or Cuba or China have reacted to the pandemic, to the way the United States has been able to handle it, you can see that this system of allowing every capitalist and every corporation to do what they want, this system of allowing rich and powerful people to control the means of production is a highly inefficient system. And when societies face big crises like the pandemic, the ability of society to be mobilized in response to big disasters is very, very weak. And countries that are much poorer and at a much lower level economically but yet countries that have broken out of the capitalist system have been able to handle the pandemic far, far more effectively. And that seems to indicate that capitalism is outmoded. When I watched the presentation from our Iranian friends, it made me deeply, deeply sad to see how the United States has been around the world. To think that the United States of America, the country that I grew up in, the country that I've lived in my whole life, that it's associated with empire and war and destruction. It's associated with plundering countries and beating people down and destroying people and heartless assassinations and drone strikes. It brings me great sadness because I know that this evil being perpetrated by the bankers and billionaires and militarists who run the United States does not represent all of what America is about. This is also the country that brought us John Brown, the heroic abolitionist who launched his raid on Harper's Ferry, trying to destroy slavery. This is also the country that had Harriet Tubman, the slave revolutionary, as the first woman ever to lead soldiers into battle, and Harriet Tubman leading freed slaves along the Combahee River during the American Civil War. This is the country of Eugene Debs. This is the country of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. This is the country of Gus Hall. This is the country of so many progressive, peace-loving people who have stood against empire. But yet, around the world, people don't see this side of America. Instead, they see the reactionary side. They see the destructive side. They see the Donald Trump side. They see the ugly side of the United States, the ugly curse of settler colonialism, the ugly realities of a society founded on slavery and the slaughter of the indigenous people. And it seems like the reactionary forces that have been in power in the United States for so long have done a very good job of convincing people around the world that they represent what America is all about, that they are America, and they've done a good job of convincing Americans that as well. So many young, progressive-minded people, as they become socialists and revolutionaries, they become convinced that they must no longer be Americans. That this means they must burn the American flag. This means they must denounce the country they live in. The progressive side of who we are as Americans, the abolitionists, the suffragists, the human rights activists, the labor unionists, the anti-war and peace movements of this country have been erased from public consciousness. And this is very disturbing. And my hope is that with the Center for Political Innovation and Students and Youth for a New America, we can show the world the progressive side of America. We can say that Donald Trump and Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they aren't what America is all about. And in fact, they are backed and tied financially to the very people that are destroying this country. As they bomb and destroy countries around the world, they are also destroying working class communities across the United States. Clean drinking water is not available in many parts of the country. People drink water contaminated. In many parts of the United States, we have a situation where the roads are being unpaved. They have a machine called a reclaimer, and it pulls up the asphalt and pulverizes it, replacing a dirt road or a paved road with a dirt road. And this is because municipalities across the United States cannot afford to maintain paved roads. I mean, the United States is crumbling from within, but our leaders are not concerned about that. They are committed to this project of securing the monopoly of gigantic corporations and their ability to reap profits from all over the world. They're not really concerned about the fact that average Americans' incomes are going down. American communities are falling apart. So many people are suffering. And the needs of average Americans have been disregarded. And instead, the needs of a global financial empire for Wall Street and London, for the Pentagon, their drive to dominate the world seems to take far more priority than the interests of average American working people. And American working people from all parts of the country, from all different political perspectives, are angry. And when we saw that horrendous raid on the Capitol, that violent attack that took place on January 6th, underlying that, I think, was desperation. I think there are many working people in this country who are confused, they're afraid, they're upset, and in their desperation, they turn to demagogues like Trump or mass movements and deceptive conspiracy theories like QAnon in the hopes of somehow alleviating their suffering. And I think this is an opportunity. This is a real opportunity for the people of the world that are struggling to resist empire and the domination of Western banks and corporations, and the people of the United States who are struggling as their country is being destroyed by multinational corporations and imperialists. This is a moment in which there can be solidarity, in which the people of the developing world in their struggle for freedom and the people of the United States and their struggle for freedom can come together and stand against empire and stand against war and militarism. And this is my hope, is that we can awaken, the American working class can awaken and realize that the enemies and the people that are destroying the lives of working people across this country are not in Iran, they're not in Venezuela, they're not in Russia or China or Cuba. The enemies of America's working people are the American ruling class. The vision that I've often put forward is a 4-step program to reinvent the country. Imagine if instead of sending soldiers all over the world to bomb and destroy and attack countries, we had a government that mobilized the young people of the United States to rebuild the country, to go out and build high-speed railway, build new universities, build new water systems and new power plants, to pave the roads of our communities. And we mobilized the young people of the United States to go out in a mass effort to construct a whole new country. Imagine that we had a government that said that the oil and the natural gas of the United States and the coal and the timber and all the natural resources of this land shouldn't be owned by big multinational corporations, but should instead be the property of the people. And the profits made from our natural resources went into the public budget to pay for schools and housing, not into the pockets of big corporations. Imagine that our banking system was no longer run by private banks, but instead we had a government that lended money in the interest of the community overall. And we strategically planned out what was good for the country, with the state having a monopoly on credit. Imagine then we could guarantee an economic bill of rights, a right to housing, a right to jobs, a right to education, to secure that everyone in the country is taken care of and no one is left behind. If those 4 steps were enacted, that would be the first step in completely reinventing the United States. Now, it's interesting because in the legal profession, they will talk about what they call fruit of a poison tree. And that means that if the way something is originated is corrupt, the result is also corrupt, right? I believe in the Islamic tradition, they talk about haram. And the idea is that, if you steal food, when you eat it, it might make you sick. Or if you get a loan to build your home, but the loan violates the Islamic law and is an irreligious or un-Islamic loan, the house might crumble or catch on fire. And the understanding is that if something is created in a corrupt way, it's cursed, it's tainted. And I think that this understanding, that if something is created in a corrupt way, it is cursed and tainted, really applies to the United States. The United States was created with the genocide of Native Americans. It was created with the transatlantic slave trade. And the United States was created in a very corrupt way, and it's maintained its power through war and militarism and destruction. And for a long time, that war and militarism and destruction, it resulted in the creation of a prosperous middle class in the homeland. We talk about the labor aristocracy, the good-paying, well-paid American industrial worker who had a house and a car and 2.5 children, leave it to Beaver, etc. But at the same time, in the 1950s, that the USA had a booming economy, 50s, 60s, even up into the 70s. During that time, all those houses, all those cars, all those hula hoops, they were all dripping with blood. They were dripping with blood of the colonized people around the world. They were dripping with blood of the Korean people and the Vietnamese people. They were dripping with the blood of the black people who lived under Jim Crow segregation, and the Chicano people who were treated as second-class citizens in their own homeland. And even the prosperous time in the United States was tainted. If you look at material from the 1950s, movies from the 1950s, there was an understanding that something was not right. Underneath it all, there was something sinister. Right after World War II, in 1948, I believe, 1947, people in the United States started talking about flying saucers and UFOs. And there started to be this paranoia that somehow we were going to be attacked from outer space. And it was a mass delusion. But it was based on the fact that they knew something wasn't right. Even though the Second World War had ended, even though the USA was prosperous, there was still this fear. And that's when movies in US culture about monsters destroying cities like Godzilla or King Kong or the giant moth or the giant spider or whatever it was became so popular. So many disaster movies came because Americans seemed to know that there was a disaster on the horizon, that this prosperity that was based on empire and exploitation could not last. There was something about the prosperity created by imperialism that made it naturally unsustainable, and some kind of horrendous disaster was on the horizon. The results of the actions of empire kind of haunted us as an American people, as a population. But now, we fast forward to 2008 and the financial crisis, and now amid the pandemic, it's very clear that the ruling class of the United States has decided they no longer need a comfortable, stable middle class at home. They no longer need an aristocracy of labor, and they are demolishing the American ruling class and destroying the domestic economy of the United States. What they've done to so many countries around the world, they are now in the process of gradually every day doing to America's working families. They are driving the United States into further poverty so they can set up one global financial dictatorship based on the rule of huge multinational corporations. And in a way, you could say this is the worst of times. In a way, you could say this is a time in which we have to live in utter pessimism and hopelessness. But I don't see it that way. I say that now is a time with which we can be full of hope. Now is a time for solidarity. Imagine a situation like what happened this summer, where an act of police brutality was seen on television, and not only did the black community go out and protest, but the white community went out and protested, the Latino community went out and protested, Asian Americans went out and protested, Arab Americans went out and protested. The whole country came together against the killing of George Floyd in an act of unprecedented solidarity. And the government was terrified and it couldn't believe the explosion of popular power that was taking place. And what was really happening was that the American working class, white, black, Asian, Latino, Arab, is tired of the economic crisis and the unfolding police state. And the sleeping giant of America's working families is awakening. And there are efforts by the Donald Trump, QAnon, right-wing movement to turn that anger into racism and anti-immigrant bigotry and demagogy. And there are efforts by the liberal crowd and, I don't know what you want to call them, the synthetic left, to turn that anger into identity politics, where we, instead of fighting the ruling class, we tear each other down and in battles and accusations and allegations of and debates about who's the most privileged, etc. But I think that the class struggle and the struggle of working people to come together and abolish capitalism, that struggle is what is really on the horizon. And in such a time, we are really, really lucky. We are really lucky to be alive, to be in the generation that will overturn capitalism in the United States, to be part of the generation that will build a socialist America. Revolution was not possible in the 1960s. Revolution was not possible in the 1930s. But as the capitalist system is collapsing and as the empire internationally is collapsing, there is a real possibility of a whole new America being created. And when we talk about socialism with American characteristics, we're saying that the socialism that emerges here in the United States, it won't be Chinese socialism, it won't be Russian socialism, Venezuelan socialism, Korean socialism. It will be a socialism rooted in America's unique conditions. It will be a socialism that addresses the problems existing in American society at this very hour. And it will be the American people in their millions who will create that socialism. But there's no question that the country must be reborn, right? I talked about fruit of a poison tree. I talked about the way that the country was founded. The country will have to be reborn on new values: kindness, brotherhood, sisterhood, compassion, solidarity, right? We won't be simply trying to fix up and repair the old system. We'll be building a whole new country. We'll be building a whole new country where profits are no longer in command and trade can be done on the basis of win-win cooperation. I think what China is doing with the Belt and Road Initiative right now, as they trade with developing countries, and China gets wealthier, and the countries they trade with get wealthier in the process. Win-win cooperation. That could be a model. Imagine the United States and China and Russia coming together to, cure cancer, to overcome, problems like the fuel, the fossil fuel-based economy, create fusion energy. Imagine, having intercontinental high-speed railway systems. Imagine going to outer space to acquire new resources, acquiring natural resources, not just from this Earth, but from the moon, as China has already started doing, from Mars, from Jupiter, from Saturn, developing space probes that could get us new energy sources. The possibilities, once capitalism and imperialism are removed, the possibilities for humanity are massive. We are actually living in a time full of great potential. And this can be a time that's very alienating. This can be a time in which so many of us are hopeless and worried and scared. But I think we should be optimistic. And an important part of our optimism is that we must always be clear that we don't advocate violence. We don't advocate destruction. We don't advocate terrorism. We would favor a peaceful transition to socialism. We would favor moving towards socialism in a way in which all of America's people could come together and through the democratic process enact a new system. And we don't want to bring destruction and chaos. It's capitalism that's bringing destruction and chaos. It's capitalism that's bringing instability. It's capitalism that's bringing violence. We want peace. We want justice. However, at the same time that we recognize that we are not advocates of destruction, the capitalists of the United States and the ruling class are very vicious. And we doubt very much that they would be willing to allow the people to exercise their democratic rights. But never has any genuine socialist revolution come through communists advocating violence or advocating terrorism or advocating acts of destruction. It has only been through advocating a peaceful transition to a socialist society and mobilizing the people to try and bring that about, and forcing the capitalists into a situation where they have to decide if they're going to allow the democratic process to continue or if they are going to resort to violence and terror to hold the people back. That is how the transition to socialism has been successful. And so we have to be absolutely clear about that. We don't want to destroy America. America is already being destroyed by capitalism. We want a whole new America built on a new foundation of justice and solidarity and brotherhood, sisterhood, community. And we are living in a very exciting time. These times are so full of suffering and fear, but at the same time, they're full of great potential. And my hope is that across this country, the Center for Political Innovation, Students and Youth for a New America, and other progressive-minded people can show the American people that the problem isn't immigrant workers, the problem isn't Muslims, the problem is capitalism. And the way out is building a new America, fighting for a government of action that will fight for working families. That is the vision I hope the Center for Political Innovation can put forward. And I've really been happy to be on this webcast. I want to thank our international guests once again, and I hope we can have a great Q&A discussion. This has been a great webcast. Let's have a good conversation.
All right. Thank you so much again, Caleb. And I'm pretty sure that everyone here would like to hear a few words. We'd like to hear from Madonna and Zoya themselves. So Madonna, Zoya, is there anything you would like to say to everyone on the conference?
You need to unmute, Zoya. You're muted.
Hello to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the name of Allah, the compassionate and merciful. Hello to all. And I wanted to thank you, Mr. Mopin, for your speech. Your opinion is very, very near to our opinion in Islam. And what we know about America and what we want to know every people around the world about Islam. First of all, let me congratulate this 42nd anniversary of Islamic Revolution to all Iranian and also to the all libertarians around the world. I think your opinions about Islam and about the history of America and all the world is very true. Every cruel attack around the world is because of some wants the Zionist regime want to do. I mean, and during the Zionist regime is alive, no country around the world won't have a calm life. Now Iran, which is not agree with the Zionist regime, is powerful because of having faithful and knowledge youth, and this causes my country to prove in scientific and military aspects. Islam will be the most powerful power around the world, nearly by our will person, who is the son of our prophet. I prefer you and all the young people around the world that read the letter of Imam Khamenei to all young people around the world. He said in this letter that I prefer you that get familiar with Islam by the correct source. You said, our friend said that, how can I help people? We can help people by getting knowledge to them. We can help people by making them know about what is happening in America, around the world. We can help people by knowing what America is doing under the Zionist regime things. What Zionist regime wills, and then America do it. I prefer all American and all people all over the world study and read the history of America and Iran especially. Learn more about the history of Iran and America. What America do in Shah's time, and what it is doing now. What is America and America government, I mean, doing with our people, with the people of Western Asia area. It is just because of getting more brief to the Zionist regime and keeping it more alive and more alive, to kill more and get this 6 more around the world. I don't know how I say what I want. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoya, for that wonderful speech. and and Madonna, would you like to say anything as well? If someone could just click on her screen.
Hello, folks. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for intervention. Your speech, Mr. Maupin, it's so good, but I think the parts of your speech is not true, but this is my belief. You said that we never see another side of America. That America is not just for war and not just for genocide or the bad of side in the world. Not this, but always, and unfortunately, in the earth and in the world, all of the wars and all of the wars and all of the genocide, America is in it, and why? And for example, in the Middle East, but we don't say Middle East, we must say West Asia. This is true and this is correct. Why American soldiers are in Iraq? Why American soldiers in Afghanistan and Syria? And what looking for in other countries? And these soldiers are innocent, and maybe they kill. And why American soldiers are in other countries and want to want to
Same.
intervention to other countries, and why? And another case that, for example, now we are in pandemic, and one of the I think one of the U.S. officials said about Wild West, that Wild West was alive. Why? Because some American people, I think, attacked to stores that buy masks or other tools that special for coronavirus, because this is this is vital and this is necessary for healthy. But why people arguments to us and to them that acts this, or other examples that, for example, Many people, many poor people now are in streets, and why America government don't sorry don't do anyone. Why? And why America government's attention to their people, their America people, why always want to intervention to other countries, and why America country. When I say America country, that means policy. America and political America. It's not humanity, and it's unhumanity. And for example, General Qasem Soleimani, and yes, this picture his. General Qasem Soleimani was a man and was a commander that saved all the people in the world, not just Yemen, not just Syria, Afghanistan, or Iraq, because he fights to ISIS group. ISIS group were in Europe, America, and who is uh, who is create ISIS group? Who is America? America country, America government is better. Yeah, created, and it's very obviously because Trump, yeah, Trump said this that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton create ISIS group, and ISIS group kill all people that's innocent. And why? America government help and help to this terrorist group? And after that, this government, this America government, say that Iran is terrorist country. Why? And what's the meaning of terrorist? If terrorists that make peace or make safe and all people, this is terrorist, or kill people and not any peace in the world. And sorry, oh, sorry, my voice is low. And why? What's the meaning of terrorist? For example, Shahid Mr. Dr. Fakhrizadeh. He was a nuclear scientist in Iran, and he studied nuclear energy, and by use to peaceful way, not make atomic bomb or etc. And why America country, America government killed him? And because he just progressed to scientist, and he studied to coronavirus too, and now Iran vaccine that has good result because for study of Dr. Shahid Fakhrizadeh. Okay, and I think, and I believe that America people are are aren't like governments, because you are you are a human that feel that humanity, but your governments, and in your historic of America, we saw that America governments and always uh, uh, always want to war and fight and follow this. And but America people, like young America people, I remember that one letter about um, our leader, our supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, to young people, to America young people, that this is very important. And I suggest to this young America people that are in life, search in Google and read it. You are separate. You are separate from your government, and you can change this game because uh, because you are separated. You are separate from your government. Government is a government has a lot of evil things, and this political is wrong. And but you can change this if you want. If you want, you can. But oh, sorry. Uh, Now it's Azan time for say prayers in Iran. Sorry. And you can change this if you want, because لطفاً قطعش کنید. قطع کنید اون چیزو. ببخشید. Sorry. Because uh, this way aren't this way doesn't have the good the good end. Okay, because we know that America government will be destroyed very soon, like a Titanic ship. And this is a fact, because all of us, we know that right is win in all of the case, but sorry, but unright is not win. And but I think the first point important that you must to think. You must to think that okay, for example, I'm American citizen, and I'm American, and I live in, for example, New York City. And okay, why that when I live in this city and this country, why my government war to other country and kill all the people, most of the people that they don't have any sin, and what is my responsible that all about those people. And for example, I have mother, father, sister, or brother, and those people have them. And why kill, and why they want why they must to kill and don't leave. For example, in Yemen, hungry children are there. And in Yemen, we know hungry children, and this is not humanity. And American government say always about human rights. Okay, human rights this. Why you always act anti-human rights, anti this, that, and anti about safe and acts of terrorists, and why you always do it and then say no, we are and we follow human rights. This is joking. This is not real, because human rights isn't that kill people and just think about yourself. Okay, and I think the life of all people in the world is important, and we must to continue this way together. Uh, Iran country, America, or other countries can unite together for uh, create a peace world, and without any war, but now in in this situation, and especially in the Biden government, we saw that um, Democrats didn't want to um, peace in the world. And the first day of President Biden, we saw that in Baghdad, terrorist attack, and most of people killed in this. And why? Why you want to intervention to other countries and in West Asia, and what look for? Yes, and I think we can unite together and broke this this mind, this evil mind that they're in here and they're in your country. And now we know that Trump uh, is terrorist, and Biden like him, and both of them are like together and no different between. And Trump did a bad and worse work that terror General Qasem Soleimani. General Qasem Soleimani safe, and he always tried to save life of people, and he never kill people that he never kill people. Just he killed ISIS group and other terrorist groups. And it's soon we know, and we will see that less of 25 years, in 25 years, in this world, we don't have any Israel in our earth, and because the starter of this all of the works related to Zionist regime. And Zionist regime and governments in America, both of them are sorry, and are together that do this terrorist works and kill most of people, Zionist regime and American government. And I hope that one day will be that we are together and without any war and without any Zionist regime and without any evil politicals and live together by peace. Thank you for watching, and I'm so sorry for my language. Sorry, because I'm foreigner and my main language is not English, and I'm so sorry. And thank you for watching and waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madonna. That was we are very honored for you and Zoya to speak with us tonight. And gotta say, Madonna, you're quite popular with the all the buzzing and the phone calls. Anyway, also if anyone wants to, please check out David Rovics at patreon.com/David Rovics and to in order to support his music. And now we are going to be taking questions. We're going to be at the Q. This is the Q&A's portion. So Lily has a question for Caleb, I believe.
Actually, I think I had a question for Max.
Oh, excuse me.
So, yeah,
I meant you had a question for Lily. Excuse my apologies.
Yeah. Max, I wanted to ask you, you gave your presentation about some of the work you had done in the communities around DC. And I was wondering if you could describe some of the conversations that you had with people while you did some of this mass organizing and work, not just with the people in the community, but also with some of the people doing this work with you. And were you able to engage with people at a political level while you were engaging in this kind of activity?
Right, yeah, of course. As a Marxist, it's very important to, while you're doing this kind of work, to engage politically with people while you're doing this work. And yes, I was able to engage with people. People, like, especially like a lot of the people that we're feeding, like, they understand the problems. They see the houses that are unoccupied and that could belong to them, where they could like sleep warm, where they wouldn't have to, live in a tent. And they see this economic contradiction. This economic contradiction isn't just indirect for them. They don't have to discover it. It's right. They can feel it in their stomachs. They can feel it like in the cold winter, when in their tent. Like, it's right apparent to them, and they know what's up. And in terms of interacting with like other activists, my main, I'd just like to shout out the Paul Robeson Club of the Communist Party USA that's active in DC. They have done a lot of good work like in this poverty relief alongside Students in Youth for New America and the Total Liberation Collective in DC. And honestly, like I feel that like a lot of leftists, we get wrapped up in these Twitter wars between, oh, you're a Marxist Leninist, oh, you're a Marxist Leninist Maoist, oh, you're a Hojist. These small differences in ideology don't matter when you get to the ground level, when people are sleeping in tents, when people are homeless, when people are waking up and like they have to like clear their tent because there's rats inside their tent taking away what little food they have. Like, these conditions that people are living in, like, people need, like, all Marxists who are currently active on Twitter, if you're debating people on Twitter, go outside. Go to your community, talk with people, go to the places that have been abandoned by the capitalists, provide what aid you can, and talk with these people and organize. if we spent half the effort that we do online debating nonsense and nonsensical things about countries that unfortunately have been consumed or are dead because of Western imperialism, we're not going to get anywhere. And I feel that a lot of Marxists in the U.S. like we need a dose of reality. Like just look outside, just look at our communities, and I promise you will get more fulfillment out of doing this type of work that Stinson Youth for New America is doing on the local level in the Beltway region, which is DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. You will get more out of it than you will get out of any squalor or bullshit on Twitter. And I'd just like to shout out, if you are in the Beltway region, DC, Northern Virginia, or Southern Maryland, or you just want to set up a branch of Stinson Youth for New America in your local area, our official email so far is syna.beltway@gmail.com. That's all lowercase. I repeat, syna.beltway@gmail.com. And we need everyone we can get. We need to unite, regardless of tiny differences, regardless of whatever there is. We need to help people, and we need to do mass work in our country if we're going to survive, like as a movement and as a people. Because the billionaires on Wall Street, the looters, the crooks, all of those people, they don't care about the American people. They don't care about the people out on the streets. They don't care about the people in their apartments that are struggling to pay rent. They don't care about people who have to foreclose on their housing. They don't care. And we are the people who actually do care. So it's up to us to organize and fight back against the imperialists, the capitalists, and the robbers.
Hey, I just had a question for either Zohar or Madonna about Iran. So we know there are elections coming up this year in Iran, and I was just wondering what your thoughts on it are. I've heard there's a lot of talk about possibly the former president Ahmadinejad running again, and he might have a good chance. So I just want to hear just your thoughts generally on the elections.
Zoya, you got on.
Speak.
May I answer again your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you please repeat your
Oh,
question?
yes. What are your thoughts on the elections in Iran this year?
I think the revolution, yes. Young people, revolutionary young people, want to and must to come in power in the government. I didn't understand what you said about Ahmadinejad, but what we know about him is that he get more distance from our leader, and when he was a revolutionary man, he was accepted with us, but little by little he gets more distance from the revolutionary ideals. We hope that the next government in Iran would be a revolutionary government to help the country and help this area, Western Asia area, to have the best, better policy, better policy for getting the area back from the Zionist regime. It's really related to our government policy. and it's really related to all other countries in this area. If the country and if the governments in this area help to American thinking and to Zionist regime, we would not have an Islamic area and would not have reached to Islamic world, and we would not have reached to peace, the real peace, the completely peace around the world. I don't know, how can I answer your question or not?
All right. Say, I think there was a question from Justin Simmons on the super chat.
Yeah, if somebody could read that, that would be great.
I can read the first one, the earlier one.
Okay.
So he said, I do have a question for Iranian speakers. How should the average American work to promote peace and understanding between the United States and Iran in the public sphere?
I have lost your voice.
Oh, he said, 1 second. How can average Americans work to promote peace between America and Iran?
What would what? Would you please repeat?
Yes, sure. How can
Excuse-
Americans? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. How can people in America promote peace with Iranians, and how can we stop our American aggression against your country?
How Americans? I think Americans American people are very near to our opinion. Their opinion is near to our opinion. I think they want freedom. They want to be in a justice world. I think they, as Mr. Mopin said, they have lots of hope to have a good world and get near to such a world. I think American people should know something, should read more something. As I said in my speech, American people should read about their history, should read about our history. Iranian history and American history is and was very near together. We have some same memories in past. We have seen some effects of the American government in our country, and we can get joined to a same opinion. If Iranian people know more about American history, and on the other side, the American people know more about Iranian history and about Western Asia history, I think something will be solved very easily. The most important thing and the base thing is that the people should and must know something, and you and all other activists around the world or in America must do it, must get people familiar with these facts, with this fact that what is happening around the world, what is happening in Asia area, Western Asia area, what is happening by American government, and as they know really, and we saw that American has had some protests against their government and against the Zionist regime, but I think this information would be more. This information and this knowledge about the facts which is happening would be more learned to people. And one other aspect that I think the Muslim have is that you and the American people should not fear, you know, a little fear maybe get you back from your ideals thinking. I think me and lots of Iranian people don't fear from, for example, American government, and don't fear from Zionist regime. And what is happening in Lebanon and in Palestine, in Iraq and Yemen, is that the soldiers, Islamic soldiers, don't afraid of this attacks. I don't know how can I say my.
Can I say
words.
something? Can I say? To continue this answer, your question is related that now we are in Fajr decades in Iran about Iran's revolution, and this is the most important happen in Iran, that Iran can independence, can have independence and without dependence, and by Imam Khomeini. And this revolution was successful because our leader was Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini, who was the main and the brave man, and like my friend that said, you don't know afraid, and for all of that it's maybe problem to you. You don't afraid. Why Iranian people want to revolution? Why? Because in Shah's time, people were the bad situation, and with not victory, and with not any freedom, and Iran was the dependent country, not independent, and this is very problem, and this was very problem, and people want to change this situation. And you know that, for example, some weeks ago in America, in Washington, D.C., people went to Senate and Senate, Parliament, and just for that they believes that, for example, we want to continue by Trump, not Biden. Okay, they could to enter to parliaments because they want. So if you want to change this situation, you must and you need you need a powerful leader first. It's very important. For example, we saw in history that all of that revolution, for example, France revolution or other countries, but it wasn't successful. But now we are in for 40 seconds of Iran revolution that it's here and there is, and we can pass for 42nd year, and it's very wonderful, and this is the important successful, and I think if you want to change this situation, and you want to change your life in America, you I suggestion to you read Iran Revolutionary. That's why people want to unique and against to Shah. Shah was very powerful, and it's very afraid, and why people can broke down Shah and can victory in this revolution and by Imam Khomeini, and you and other America youngs and Europe youngs or other youngers can read this Iran history, because it's very important. Because it's very important that 42nd years after this revolution, now it's we are in here, and this Islamic revolution, and this is successful, and you can read and copy or learn about it, that change this, and I hope these days in America will happen very soon. Thank you.
Definitely, I think you're definitely right about we need to know about other places' history, and I think dialogue and knowledge and not being ignorant about other places is key to preventing conflicts. I thank you for your words. So the next question was from Justin Simons. Hold on, let me find it. It was for Caleb Maupin. So he said, what are your thoughts and opinions about the possibility of average Americans engaging in the preventing of sales of arms sales from the United States to violent regimes, such as, I assume he's talking about Saudi Arabia, with the atrocities they're committing in Yemen and other countries?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that there needs to be a new level of awareness. After General Qasem Soleimani was killed, all over American media, they said that he was just like Osama bin Laden, that he was just like ISIS. And this was a lie. And in fact, General Qasem Soleimani had fought against ISIS, and he had fought against the terrorist forces, and that there was so much deception, and that Americans, I think, I used to say, after visiting Iran a number of times, I said that everything that Americans think is true about Iran is actually true about Saudi Arabia. Because, Iran is a country where they have women who are generals in the military. Women are very well represented in the parliament. There are Christians who openly practice their faith. There are Zoroastrians who openly practice their faith. They have elections. Saudi Arabia is an absolute dictatorship with public beheadings, etc. So I think that there's the first thing is there needs to be a change in perception. We need to understand that Osama bin Laden and the Wahhabi terrorists and the ISIS terrorists are tied to Saudi Arabia. They're not tied to Iran. But the second thing is that the main thing is that economic development is the road to peace. And that's not just true for the Middle East region, but for the entire world. When people are in poverty, and when people have no other alternatives, like in Afghanistan, that's when they turn to drugs, and that's when they turn to terrorist groups. But Iran and China have long had a plan for bringing economic development to Afghanistan, building railroads so that Afghanistan, because it's a landlocked country, could have access to the ocean, and they could begin making products that could be sold on the international markets. And what the One Belt, One Road initiative of China is doing, and what the Eurasian Economic Union of Russia is doing, and what Iran has tried to do throughout the region is to bring peace through bringing economic development. The United States wants the Arab world, in particular, the Arab countries, to basically function as their oil source and as purchasers of their weapons. But imagine if countries like Kuwait and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and Qatar could be economically prosperous. Imagine if the countries throughout the Middle East region could do what Gaddafi did with the Great Man-Made River. Gaddafi, he built the world's biggest irrigation system and greened the desert of Libya in a mass construction project. And in doing so, he made Libya much more economically prosperous and much more stable. And the goal of the Western imperialists has been to keep the countries in the Middle East region as just underdeveloped countries they can sell weapons to and buy oil from. And the countries that have broken out of that, that system, like Iran, like Libya, like Syria, they've focused instead on economic development. And you should see the amazing highways they have in Iran and the amazing level of economic development that has taken place because Iran has broken free. And if the countries in that region could start to become independent and focus on their own economic development, pretty soon they would play a different role. They wouldn't be simply, playing the role of purchasing weapons from the United States. When Trump went to Saudi Arabia, he talked of building an Arab NATO. And it would, he basically wants to polarize the Middle East region, and polarize the region. Are you for Iran or are you with Saudi Arabia? And he sees a huge amount of profits to be made for weapons manufacturers in doing that. Betsy DeVos, who was Trump's Secretary of Education, her brother is Eric Prince of Blackwater. One of the big Trump supporters is Bernie Marcus, the owner of the Home Depot stores. And, if you go into any of those stores, you can't find a product hardly in a Home Depot that's not made by a military contracted corporation. So the plan of Trump was to create a new arms race in the Middle East so that lots of money could be made for weapons manufacturers. But the road to peace in that region is economic development. And when countries are trading with each other, they're far less likely to go to war. And if they're trading with each other on a win-win basis, and there's infrastructure being constructed, and people have opportunities other than drugs or terrorism, that's the road to peace. And so my hope is that we can push policies of economic development, building of infrastructure, and moving these countries away from just being the oil supplier and weapons purchasers of American corporations.
Yes, my question is for Zuha. What is the biggest falsehood that Americans believe about Iran? suppose Madonna could answer as well, anyone.
Could you ask question repeatedly?
Yes, sure. What is the biggest lie that Americans believe about Iran?
Mm-hmm. The biggest lie, I think, there are a lot of lying stories about Iran and Iranian people, but I don't know that you listened what. I think my belief, and I think that the biggest lie is about that we are want to war and kill people. Um, this is lie, and this is just this is not true because Iran, not just for belief, because our religion is Islamic, and our religion doesn't allow to us to start war and kill innocent people. Iran always offensive, not offensive, and military strategy, and we defend of country that they want to and they need to help, and we save all these people, not want to war and kill. And maybe some people, or I don't know, most of people or some people in the world afraid from Iran. That why Iran is terrorist country, and for example in movies or propaganda, this shows that Iran very has afraid face, and they want to kill people, and this is false, and this is not true. We are always we always follow to peace and safe people, not want to start war. And you can see in Iran historic that Iran never started any war, but unfortunately your country and America start a lot of war. And but if a country want to war and fight to us, sure that the end of war isn't to finish to other and to you. That means this country first start. The finish of war isn't that's they want to finish, because we have and after Iran revolution, Islamic revolution, we progress to military and scientists and other case, and we have a lot of missiles, and just for defense, not for fights. And Imam Khamenei, our supreme leader, said that about negotiation. Yeah, we never negotiation, and we don't fight to other countries, because our first about our religion and our ideology, our ideology that Shia and Sunni, both of them are Muslims, and in Iran we live together, and other religions and Christians, Jews are in Iran, and we live together without any problem. Okay, and but this is important that Iran never start any war, and we never follow to war and fight, and that means genocide or something this. And but if country want to war, certainly we answer strongly. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
welcome. Thank you so much, Madonna. And I want to give an applause to everyone here, especially a thank you to David Rovics for that amazing tune. Again, I am in love with folk music once again. And I want to thank Caleb for bringing us together as always. And also the fact that Madonna and Zora giving their side of the story and giving their speeches and their word, this should help prove to everyone that the people of Iran are not our enemies. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea are not our enemies. Vietnam is not our enemy. Venezuela is not our enemy. Neither is Russia, and neither is China. Our enemy is finance capital, and the military-industrial complex, and the Silicon Valley of fascists. Those are our enemies. And we are all comrades here. And I want to give everyone a red salute for tonight. And if you want to follow me, you could follow me on Twitter at Darlene Charchar. That's CHAR. And follow me, and you could also find me on Instagram at Just Call Me Charchar with the underscore with in between words. And also with Lily, Gavin, and Max Sasak, would you also tell everyone where they can find you guys as well?
Sure. You can find me on TikTok at Lily Da Kami, Lily Da Kami.
Yeah, go online, search Students and Youth for a New America. And if you want to reach out to me personally, search Gavin Lockard. That's my name.
If you want to keep up with the developments that Sign Up Beltway is doing, look, we have on Twitter, we are at Students Beltway with a capital S and a B. And we're also on Instagram as Sign Up Beltway. And if you want to reach out and form a chapter of Signa, contact us at syna.beltway@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for bearing with us for almost in 2 hours and 2.5 hours. I just want to give. I just want to say. Excuse me, lost my voice for a sec. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We are excited, to see you all again soon. And have a good night. Stay safe and healthy. In solidarity.
Thanks for holding this
yes,
program.
And thank you so much again, Madonna and Zara.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Folks.
Good night.